Hey guys, Nathaniel Saber here with Weathercast, and this is my preliminary winter forecast for 2021-2022, primarily involving the continental United States. So the first part of my forecast that I try to get into when I initialize these forecasts is looking at the global sea surface temperature anomalies. With that being said, you look into the MGO, the PDO, the AO, the PNA, the NAO, the AO, kind of however you want to look at it. However, right now I'm looking kind of at the fact that we have a weak La Nina kind of setting up, and we have a large positive anomaly in the Gulf of Alaska and a large positive anomaly off the eastern seaboard of the United States. With those positive anomalies, you can expect to have more buoyant air due to the warmer than average sea surface temperatures, just the warmer sea surface temperatures relative to their surroundings. So with that buoyant air, you can expect more convection. With more convection, you can expect height falls. And with height falls, you can expect general troughiness. So I do expect a trough to kind of set up in the Gulf of Alaska, pump a ridge into the western part of the United States, and then you can see right here that would favor troughiness as well, which would again pump a ridge into the southeastern part of the United States and into the eastern part of the United States, leaving the areas basically between the Rocky Mountains and the Appalachians set up kind of in prime conditions for general troughiness over the winter, general storminess, and cooler than average temperatures. Now, besides these sea surface temperature anomalies, I have been looking into, given some of the meteorologists that I follow, they have brought up ideas of how hurricane seasons and the way they're dictated in the Atlantic can kind of give us clues and hints into how following winters are going to go. And so I've kind of taken a look into that, and I've given a set of analog years and put up an analog package considering those hurricane seasons based off of where I think our current hurricane season 2021 is going to go. The first one of those seasons that we're going to look at is going to be 1985. So 1985, not an overall ton of activity, but in the regions you do see activity, you see a strong ridge pretty much dominating the central Atlantic, and you see a lot of activity in the eastern Gulf of Mexico, as well as off the eastern seaboard of the United States. This could play a role for us here as we go through this current hurricane season. As you can currently see, Fred is somewhere in this area, as well as another invest behind that, which is also going to track through the same area, which is pretty similar to what we saw in 1985. Is that going to pan out fully and accurately? That's to be determined. However, it's a good tool to look at going forward. The next season we're going to look at is going to be 1989. Now in 1989, you can kind of see how that ridge over the central Atlantic was a bit weaker, and you saw a lot more storms try to recurve up into the north and try to basically use the Atlantic as a heat pump, trying to deliver the heat from the tropics to the polar regions of the planet. However, in the eastern Gulf, you can kind of differentiate a little bit of activity over here, and actually a substantial amount of activity that year, which you had two Category 1 landfalling hurricanes that year around the Bay of Galveston. You also had a tropical storm Allison around that time, not to be confused with the tropical storm Allison of 2001. However, you can kind of see similarity between that year and also, I believe, 2017 going forward. So if you go ahead and look at 2017, that's the next year. Yeah, so again, 2017, you have some activity in the western Gulf of Mexico, primarily in the western Gulf of Mexico when you do get into the Gulf, and you also see a weaker overall ridge in the central Atlantic. Less storms trying to absolutely recurve into the middle of nowhere, and they're kind of diddy-bopping around this whole anti-cyclone, if you will. Again, another year pretty similar to 1985, in my opinion. I believe this is 2018. You're going to see more activity in the eastern Gulf of Mexico. You can see a lot of storms located right here, which if you look back to 1985, you can see a lot of storms again. If you want to go back to the earlier part of the video, you can see a lot of storms focused in that kind of area. Again, a stronger ridge in the central Atlantic. Not as strong as 1985. However, it is still prevalent given the fact that a lot of these storms have been squashed. You're not seeing any Category 4s or Category 3s or any major hurricanes out here. You're just kind of seeing some fish storms that gain intensity or basically form off old frontal boundaries, and those are kind of meandering their way about the Atlantic. So the next season we're going to look at is going to be 2020. And the 2020 season is very similar to 1989 and also 2017, given that the primary focus of activity is again in the western Gulf of Mexico. Now, 2020 was an extremely hyperactive year. I'm not expecting nearly the amount of storms that we saw in 2020 again this year. However, I think for the general basis and consensus of where the storms have been tracking, given said years we've looked over, you can kind of get a general area for general areas of interest for where we should look into. And that should be probably the Western Gulf of Mexico, the Eastern Gulf of Mexico, as we've gone over, and also probably the eastern coast of the United States. Again, with 2020, you can see a bit of a stronger central ridge. We had a couple instances where that ridge weakened and allowed a few strong storms to go north, acting as heat pumps for the planet, and that is to be expected from time to time. However, I do see a lot of similarities between last year and this year, given the fact that overall sea surface temperature anomalies are relatively the same. So with that said, let's go ahead and look at the analog package that I have set up for pretty much the coming December, or at least what we can get an idea for the coming December, given the years that I've looked at, which is 1985, 1989, 2017, 2018, 2020. And with those years, we can see that the composite temperature anomaly looks something like this. So everywhere basically pretty much east of the Rocky Mountains, you can see predominantly low average temperatures. You got some extremely cold temperatures up here in New England. New England, like 6 degrees below average up there, and like up there near Maine is that's some pretty chilly weather. But we can expect to see something like that, maybe similar this year. But this has kind of given us an idea of where to look, and kind of giving us an idea of the paths we can kind of expect things to go down as we move forward. So with that, let's go ahead and look at the precipitation anomalies for the December composite of these years. Okay, so for the December precipitation composite map, we see that we have a bit of a wetter pattern kind of setting up around the southeastern part of the United States, probably indicating some stalled out fronts coming down from the north. We have a bit of a drier area setting up into the interior of the Ohio Valley region, and we have a bit of a drier area up in the New England region. Along the west coast, a bit worrying, we see a big kind of dry pattern setting up in these analog packages, and we've already had such a dry year out there that's a bit discerning looking forward. However, I do think the rain is coming there. May it be December or January, probably more into January, as you will see as we look into these next January composites for both temperature and precipitation. So January, right? We've kind of been flipping back and forth. I think that as we head into the winter months, we're going to kind of see November be kind of a warm month. And I know I'm kind of regressing here, but November kind of being a warm month, December kind of being a cold month, and January being kind of a thawing kind of month. That January kind of thaw everybody talks about. So we're going to kind of see something like that this year. Now, this is an absolute blowtorch. Do I think this is absolutely going to happen this year? I think this is actually going to pan out to the extremity that it is right here with these 5 to 7 degree average for the month anomalies that we're seeing in these analog packages? Probably not. However, it's indicative of the fact that we need to look out for warming temperatures in January. And given that, we're probably going to see a bit of a more zonal flow set across, which is going to, I believe, provide some relief to the Pacific Northwest, given the rainfall. We're going to see a couple fire hoses set up in there. And by fire hoses, I mean the jet stream kind of sets up from the subtropical Pacific into the Pacific Northwest and just kind of delivers a bunch of precipitation over that month. So with that, let's go ahead and look at the precipitation anomalies for January, given this composite analog map. And with this composite analog setup, you're going to see, once again, like I was talking about, a very above average precipitation totals in the Pacific Northwest, kind of drying out here in the southeastern part of the United States, and getting very snowy. Because even though these temperatures are above average in New England, right, those temperatures are still more than cold enough to support snowfall in this area. And given the above average precipitation, you can expect above average snowfall even with above average temperatures in that region. So that's something to look at too moving forward. Now the next month we're going to look at is going to be a composite map of those Februarys from those winters. So you can see those Februarys, you see that bit of a southeastern ridge kind of setting up. And that southeastern ridge may come into play from time to time. Do I expect it to be as prominent as it is here in this composite map? Like I said, again, with the previous month and the blowtorch across the north, maybe not. But it is indicative that we should be on the lookout for warmer than average temperatures here across the Southwest in the month of February, and probably extremely intrusive cold shots into the central tier of the United States and northern tier of the United States into February. given the analog package we have set up and given the current sea surface temperature anomalies, along with the weak La Nina we have going on. So moving forward, we'll go ahead and look at the precipitation map for February, which you can see clearly an extreme winter battle zone kind of setting up here with the analog packages dictating you have a lot of stalled fronts or a lot of fronts running into a lot of warm, moist air from that southeast ridge, initiating a lot of thunderstorms, which, given a lot of the cold intrusions we will be having during the month of February, which is probably going to be a lot of snow and ice storms in this region, probably some southern snowfalls that we've seen again from time to time over the previous years. But what's really promising for a lot of people in the Pacific Northwest is the rainfall. If you can see, these composite maps are pointing towards the fact that we may be able to look forward to some much needed and beneficial rainfall in the month of February. Okay, so after February comes March. So we can go ahead and look at March composite temperature anomalies, and you can see again a rebound, kind of that flip-flopping pattern we've been talking about. So we go into a warm January, I think, for the fall, cold December to start the winter pretty quick, warm January to kind of thaw things out, pretty cold February, freeze things back over, and then March, kind of an early spring. It looks like out west they might have a bit of a cooler March setting up, but we'll see how that goes. But in terms of the overall general picture, I think you can expect kind of an early spring, a fall spring, so to speak, in March, which again you will see. I think, given the flip-floppy pattern, in April we'll probably go back into a colder pattern, which will again dictate growing seasons and stuff like that. Like we saw this year, a bunch of late freezes up in the upper Midwest that really kind of decimated a lot of crop. Is very unfortunate. Am I expecting things like that this year? It's tough to say. However, I do think in the right direction we can go is saying that March will probably be warmer than April, given averages, relative to averages. So that's the important thing we're going to look at here, is relative to averages. So with March in this composite package, let's go ahead and look at the precipitation. So we're kind of ending winter here on a dry note in the Pacific Northwest, a wet note in the central tier of the United States, and drying out over the northeastern tier of the United States and also the southern tier of the United States. So with this, though, we need to keep in mind that it's still more than cold enough this time of year to generate ample snowfall and also ice storms. So in the central tier of the United States, keep that in mind moving forward. April will probably be cooler than March. Granted, April is part of spring, so that will not be included in this forecast, but given the flip-floppy pattern, should this pattern continue and not degenerate, we will probably see a cooler April than we will March. Relative to averages, that's the key term here. Alright, so this is my overall temperature forecast for the winter as a whole. You can see on my legend I have plus 1.5, plus 0.5 to 1 in the yellow. In the white I have near normal. In the blue, kind of tealish color, I have minus 0.5 to minus 1. And the darker blue, I have minus 1.5 to minus 2. You can see how the southern or southeastern part of the United States is a little bit above average, given that southeastern ridge. Texas, Oklahoma, like kind of the Arklatex area is kind of get hammered again this year, I think, basically because of where the trough is setting up in the central part of the United States. The Great Lakes is probably going to get hammered pretty good with below average temperatures, just simply because of where the intrusions of cold air are going to be located, the source regions, and also, again, with another source region being in Western Canada from some of that cold air, I do expect areas of Wyoming and Montana to be situated in some of that cooler as well. In between, we kind of have the battle zone, if you will, I guess, between kind of fluctuating temperatures and whatnot. I guess you could call that the near normal area. But again, up into the northern central part of the United States, I do see that kind of averaging out to be around near normal, considering the probably very well above normal temperatures we'll see in January, maybe some parts of March. Just kind of averaging things out between the colder months we have there. The southwestern United States, kind of same story, different year for you guys. It's another La Nina, so it's probably going to be pretty warm for you guys. And it's not just basing that off the La Nina, it's just pretty much how the ridges are going to set up and where the troughs are going to set up and how that's going to move forward. So with precipitation, let's go ahead and look at that. So with my precipitation map again, across the western tier of the United States, not encouraging news at all. I do, I cannot rule out a few storms coming in, and the Sierra Nevada is actually wringing those storms out and getting a bunch of precipitation out of the mountains and a bunch of much needed snowfall. But with that said, we need to look at the picture as a whole and realize that this winter is probably not going to be too extremely wet for you guys. Granted, the Pacific Northwest should see some much needed moisture. And you guys should get some storms every now and then in the southwest, but don't expect too much out of this winter yet again. And the northern central part of the United States, expect kind of sort of below average temperatures. And again, this legend here is in inches. So if you can kind of see, it's inches relative to average, relative to average being kind of the key term here. And along the eastern seaboard, kind of the same kind of deal. This may, in the New England area, even out kind of to near normal, depending on how much precipitation we kind of get in those warmer months, depending on how pumped the jet stream wants to get and how many storms want to kind of ride up that trough axis and bring you guys more precipitation. But I do see a lot of precipitation here kind of in, I guess, the Tennessee Valley, I guess you'd call it, into the Oklahoma, northern Texas, Arklatex kind of area. And then a bullseye kind of in southern Missouri, northern Arkansas, Tennessee, Kentucky, those kind of areas with +2 to +3 inches of rain. Or rain or snow. It depends on how cold we can get those temperatures, really. And if like in February, if we get that kind of temperature anomaly with some super cold intrusions, maybe even in December, we can see some pretty big outbreaks of ice storms and snowstorms. So going forward, guys, it's been my winter forecast for 2021, 2022. I hope you guys enjoyed. Sorry for all the stuttering and sorry for the unprofessionalism, but this is kind of a hobby of mine, and I hope you guys enjoyed. I'll be posting more updates as we move forward. Please feel free to check out my other videos on this channel. There's not a whole lot to offer, but I do have videos from last season's winter forecast, and hope you guys enjoy, and you guys have a great rest of your year. Thank you very much.